This week, somewhere in the world, an employee is being fired from a job they've dedicated 10 years to. Perhaps as you watch this video, someone is right now tucking their file under their arm and walking out the office door, escorted by a security guard. They're leaving behind their desk, the photos on that desk, and the relationships they built there. And as they walk, a single question keeps circling in their mind, weighed down by the years. What did I do wrong? The answer will shock them, because they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't make a major mistake. They didn't steal money from the company. They didn't consistently miss their performance targets. He wasn't involved in a scandal. He simply spoke 4 sentences. 4 sentences, each of which sounded completely reasonable, completely honest, exactly the kind of things a mature, sensible adult would say. And that is precisely why they are so dangerous. Because what destroys you is never the obvious, big, glaring mistake you make. Sometimes what ruins you is the most innocent sentence you construct with the best of intentions, the most sincere feelings, and the purest of motives. Understanding this truth is one of the most valuable things you can learn in your professional life, because you already know how to avoid major mistakes. But to avoid saying these 4 sentences, you first need to see why they're dangerous. My name is Stefan, and for over a decade, I've been watching how the things people say at work can derail their careers. I'm not just talking about getting fired. I'm talking about the path leading up to it, the paperwork they unwittingly create with their own hands, and how they quietly build that case against themselves. Today, I'm going to show you those 4 sentences. I'll explain step by step why each one backfires. I'll pinpoint the impulse that drives you to say that sentence in the moment. And for each one, I'll give you an alternative that meets the same need but protects you. By the end of this video, you'll see your workplace through the eyes of lawyers and HR professionals. And that perspective will protect you from this day forward, in every meeting, every hallway, every email, and every conversation. Before we begin, an important note. I am not your lawyer, and what I'm saying here is not legal advice. This is educational information based on patterns I've observed time and again in the workplace, across different industries, company sizes, and job roles. If a serious situation arises at work, make sure to consult an employment law attorney in your area. Now, let's get back to the topic. First sentence. That's not my job. Sounds perfect, doesn't it? You read the job description when you started. You know what you were hired to do. You know your boundaries. And now your manager is asking you to do something completely different, unrelated, and outside your job description. You're standing up for yourself. You're setting boundaries. You're acting like a mature professional. No one can walk all over you. The problem is this. In the private sector of many countries, where nearly everything is governed by an at-will employment system, your job description isn't a contract. It's a summary, a marketing document, a document that could be rewritten the very day it was written, or reshaped into something completely different the next morning. The employer can expand, narrow, or completely redefine their responsibilities at any moment, for any reason. And without even realizing it, you're blowing up your most important asset, your track record of compliance and flexibility, with a single sentence. And when you say, "That's not my job," your manager doesn't interpret it as setting a reasonable boundary. Instead, they perceive it as insubordination. And insubordination is a golden word in the corporate world. Because insubordination is the first brick in the wall of documentation. Every HR investigation, every termination package, every unemployment hearing boils down to this question. Can the company demonstrate a pattern of the employee refusing to perform the tasks assigned to them? You just gave them the first sentence, the first brick, the first piece of evidence of that paper trail. Now I must ask, if the requested task is truly illegal, such as falsifying records, working without overtime pay, covering up a workplace injury, or covering up harassment, that's an entirely different world. In that case, refuse. And make sure to document that refusal via email. Create a time-stamped record. Such refusals are protected under whistleblower and labor laws. But for everything else, for any task within legal boundaries, the professional move isn't to refuse, but to reframe it. Try this. I'd be happy to take it on. Which of my current priorities should I postpone to make room for this? Just one sentence. But with that sentence, you've turned a conflict into a conversation about resource allocation. And you've quietly, politely, and professionally shifted the decision about your workload onto the shoulders of the person who employs you. Second sentence. Can we keep this between us? This sentence makes me uneasy, because the vast majority of people who say this are genuinely well-intentioned. They trust you, they're seeking help, they want someone to hear them. And it is precisely this openness, this sincerity, that makes it so dangerous. Here's what needs to be said clearly. There is no such thing as between us. When you pull an HR representative into an empty conference room and whisper something to them, you're essentially telling it to an employee whose job is to protect the company from legal risk. HR isn't your therapist. HR isn't your friend. HR is a department there to protect the company's interests, paid for by the very people you're complaining about. This isn't a personal criticism. It's a structural reality. Here's the typical scenario. You share something sensitive, maybe about a manager, maybe about a colleague, maybe about something you witnessed. And within 24 to 72 hours, the person you mentioned knows, sometimes word for word. There's a reason for this, and it's important to understand it. The moment you raise a concern that could expose the company to legal action, HR is typically obligated to launch a formal investigation. An investigation means interviews. Interviews mean the accused person is questioned. And when they're questioned, they're told exactly what's been said about them. Our private conversation has turned into information circulating within the company. You may now be on file as someone who causes trouble, files complaints, or doesn't fit in. If you truly need to report something serious, the proper course of action is to do so in writing and ensure that the subject of your complaint falls under legal protection. Discrimination based on race, gender, age, disability, religion, or national origin, or illegal behavior such as wage theft, retaliation, or security breaches. Written complaints regarding protected topics provide you with legal protection. Verbal discussions about personal conflicts and vague complaints, however, create ammunition that can be used against you. Understanding the difference between the two could save your career. The third sentence. I'm applying elsewhere. This sentence is the quickest career killer on this list. It's silent, swift, and irreversible. The moment that sentence lands in a manager's email or a hallway conversation, a silent switch flips inside. And you won't even feel that switch flip. You just think you're acting like a mature, transparent, honest professional. But the manager is now looking at you through a different lens. You're no longer an employee. You're a liability. You're a risk factor. The manager isn't thinking about your development plan anymore. They aren't thinking about the next project. They're thinking about replacing you, not in their plans, but in yours. You've likely seen this happen to you and others around you many times. During the week the news was announced, key accounts were quietly handed over to someone else. Access to sensitive systems was restricted. Performance reviews that were glowing just 6 months ago suddenly began to include phrases like lack of motivation, incompatibility with the team, and difficulty meeting leadership expectations. And then it happens. When a downsizing list is drawn up or a restructuring is announced, your name is on it. Under the at-will employment system, your employer isn't required to give you advance notice. They aren't required to give you time to complete your job search on your own terms. They can show you the door whenever they want. And this happens frequently in industries that handle sensitive customer data, trade secrets, or strategic information. Sending someone on their way within an hour and cutting off their system access has become standard procedure. The rule is this: your job search belongs solely to you until you have a signed offer letter in hand, until your background check clears, and until your start date is close enough that you're ready to walk out the door. Don't share it with anyone, not with a colleague, not even with a coworker you trust, and definitely not with your manager. And keep this in mind: giving 2 weeks' notice is not a legal requirement. It's a tradition. Whether following it benefits you or harms you is something you'll have to decide based on your specific situation. The fourth sentence. A lot is going on in my personal life right now. This sentence resonates most with the kindest, most honest, and most trusting people because it sounds human, vulnerable, genuine, and honest. Maybe you said it to explain why you were running late. Maybe to ask for a little flexibility. Maybe you trusted your manager and wanted them to understand where you were. And maybe your manager was genuinely understanding in that moment. It was a nice conversation, a warm moment, a connection. The problem is that conversation ended, but that information didn't. Vague personal explanations are among the most dangerous things you can share at work because they give your employer a pre-prepared narrative about your reliability that they can bring up whenever they want in the future. And that narrative is used against you, unwittingly, in your weakest moment. The brain is playing a sneaky trick here, and it's crucial to understand this. In May, you're talking about a personal matter. In July, you miss a deadline. Suddenly, your manager remembers that conversation from May, and that single missed deadline becomes an example of the distractions we've been observing for some time. When the budget tightens in October and leadership asks managers to identify underperformers, your name comes up. Not because you're bad at your job, because the manager has a paper trail of concerns that started with information you provided yourself. The manager might not even see you as a bad person, but they have a story, and that story makes their decision easier. If you're going through something truly serious, a medical diagnosis, a care crisis, a mental health issue, there are laws specifically designed to protect you. The Family and Medical Leave Act grants eligible employees up to 12 weeks of job-protected leave. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires reasonable accommodations for qualifying conditions. Use these frameworks. Make a formal, specific request based on a protected category. Trust me, avoid the vague human version of the conversation. Keep your personal life private. And when you need protection, request it by its legal name through official channels. Now let's put it all together, because all 4 sentences follow the same pattern. Each one sounds reasonable. Each one sounds honest. Each one sounds like something a normal, sensible, well-meaning adult would say. And each one, without you realizing it, quietly and irreversibly shifts the power from you to your employer. Correction isn't about being cold, paranoid, or fake. Correction is about recognizing that work is a relationship with specific incentives and structures, and learning to speak in a way that protects you within that structure. Don't refuse the job, renegotiate the priorities. Don't complain informally. File a written, formal complaint through official channels regarding legally protected behaviors. Keep your job search private. Stay silent until the offer is signed and the start date is confirmed. Don't discuss your personal life. If you need protection, request it by citing the specific law that applies. And internalize this: you are not your employer's family. You are not their friend. You are a professional within a work relationship built on specific incentives, documents, and calculations of interest. And that professionalism is what protects your job, your reputation, and the power you hold.